All right, let's get right into it. When you think of Antarctica, what comes to mind? Probably this vast, stable, frozen continent, right? A permanent fixture at the bottom of the world. Well, it turns out that whole picture is changing, and new research is painting a radically different and, frankly, pretty alarming story. Yeah, that idea we all had of a slow-changing, isolated giant, it's just wrong. It's dangerously out of date. Scientists are now realizing that what's happening down there is happening fast, it's all connected, and it has massive consequences for every single one of us. And look, this isn't just some wild theory. This comes directly from Dr. Nirali Abram, the lead author of a huge new study. And the key phrase here is not happening in isolation. Think of it like a cascade. One change is knocking over the next, creating a domino effect. So when you put the old view next to the new one, wow, it's a huge difference. We're going from this idea of a stable, slow, faraway place to the reality of a system that's undergoing a massive regime shift with sudden changes that have very real global impacts. So let's break down how this all started. Okay, first up, we need to understand the engine behind this whole shift. You can almost think of it as a tipping point machine, a series of gears and levers that, once they get going, are incredibly hard to stop. So let's get on the same page with what a tipping point really is. It's not just things changing gradually. It's that moment a switch flips, a system crosses a critical line, and a feedback loop kicks in that causes the system to start changing rapidly, all on its own. And this timeline, it just lays it out so clearly. For decades, everything seemed more or less stable. In fact, get this, the sea ice actually hit a record high in 2014. But right after that, something snapped. The sea ice just began to crash at a rate scientists literally called unbelievable. So just how fast was that crash? Well, this number is just stunning. Over the last 10 years, Antarctica's winter sea ice has been disappearing 4.4 times faster than the Arctic's. We've all heard about the crisis in the Arctic for years, right? Well, this is happening even more aggressively. Let me put that another way, because this is just staggering. In a single decade, Antarctica lost the same amount of sea ice that the Arctic lost in almost half a century. I mean, that is the very definition of an abrupt, rapid change. So what's the engine driving this crazy acceleration? It's a classic positive feedback loop. This is the core of that tipping point machine we mentioned. It's where the effect of a change becomes its own cause, creating the self-perpetuating vicious cycle. Okay, so here's how it works, and it's actually pretty simple. Bright, white sea ice is like a giant mirror for the planet, reflecting the sun's heat back into space. But when that ice melts, it exposes the dark ocean underneath. And that dark water, well, it does the opposite. It absorbs the sun's heat. That warms the ocean, which, you guessed it, melts even more ice. And on and on and on the cycle goes. And on top of this accelerating trend, the system is being hammered by what scientists call acute attacks. These are insane extreme weather events. In March of 2022, a heat wave spiked temperatures in East Antarctica by an almost unbelievable 40 degrees Celsius. That's 72 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. These kinds of shocks are what can push a vulnerable system right over the edge. Okay, so we've seen how this is all happening, but now for the big one. Why should we care? Why does any of this matter to us, thousands of miles away? Well, because what happens in Antarctica absolutely does not stay in Antarctica. And let's be blunt about the stakes here. Dr. Matthew England, one of the study's co-authors, puts it very clearly. We are not just talking about an environmental problem. We are talking about a trigger for global instability that would make today's problems look small. And here it is, the single biggest threat. Scientists are warning that the West Antarctic ice sheet is getting dangerously close to its own tipping point, an unstoppable collapse. If that goes, it holds enough ice to raise global sea levels by over 3 meters. That's nearly 10 feet. That would literally redraw the maps of our coastlines and swallow coastal cities whole. But it's not just about the water rising. All of that cold, fresh meltwater is messing with something huge called the Antarctic overturning circulation. The easiest way to think about this is like the planet's circulatory system for the deep ocean. It moves heat, oxygen, and nutrients all around the globe, and it's absolutely critical for a stable climate. And when that system slows down, well, It's bad news across the board. It means less heat gets moved around the planet, the ocean gets worse at absorbing CO2 from the air, and vital nutrients that feed marine life get trapped at the bottom of the sea. And to top it all off, models are suggesting this slowdown could happen twice as fast as the one in the Atlantic that we're already so worried about. And of course, the impact right there in Antarctica is just devastating. For iconic species like emperor penguins, the loss of stable sea ice means their chicks simply don't have enough time to grow their waterproof feathers before the ice breaks up. Scientists call it a catastrophic breeding failure, and it threatens the very foundation of the global food web, phytoplankton, which depend on those ocean currents to survive. So, after hearing all of that, it's pretty easy to feel a sense of, well, despair. But it's really important to see that the science also gives us a clear sense of urgency. It helps us understand what's already set in motion and what we can still fight for. Now, this is a really, really important distinction to make. When you hear a scientist say a change is locked in, they mean a specific process, like the full melts of an ice sheet over hundreds of years might be unavoidable at this point. That does not mean the entire climate is unrecoverable. It's the difference between we might lose this battle and the entire war is over. And the war is not over. And we have to be honest with ourselves here. Because of all the heat that's already stored in the Southern Ocean, that feedback loop we talked about is going to keep spinning. The hard truth is, even if we hit all our climate targets tomorrow, Antarctic sea ice will likely keep declining for centuries. Some damage is already baked into the system, and that means we have to prepare and adapt. But, and this is the key, that does not make our actions meaningless. It's the exact opposite. It makes them more critical than ever. As Dr. England says, every single fraction of a degree matters. The less we warm the planet from here on out, the more of these domino effects we can prevent from ever even starting. The fight now is about limiting the damage. And that really leaves us with this final question. The Antarctic has shown us in terrifying detail that tipping points are real. Some of those dominoes are already falling, and we might not be able to stop them. So the defining question for all of us is, what are we prepared to do right now to stop this from becoming a global cascade?